Welcome to day 9 of the 30-day AI Automation Pro Challenge. The challenge where you become an AI Pro in only 30 days, even if you start as a complete beginner. At this point, we already learned quite a lot and you also built quite a lot. You have your own server, you have your own domain, you deployed your own website on that domain, and you also created very early in the challenge already your very first end-to-end workflow. And today, in day 9, I want to give you another tool for your toolbox, and these are the so-called Flask apps. Flask apps are simple web applications powered by Python, and first, I want to show you in a little presentation what a Flask app is, what it is all about, what you can do with it, how it is structured, and then we will build a very first simple Flask app, run it on our server, and then tomorrow and the upcoming days, we will step by step further develop the app so that it is serving the purpose of our Yacht calculator. And step by step, we bring everything together so that you learn everything you need to know to build real powerful AI automations. And not only that, on top you learn how to build websites, how to build Python apps, how to code with ChatGPT. I know at that point still many people will probably think, why is he teaching all these different things and not just end-to-end? I tell you guys, it is not just about end-to-end. AI automation and selling AI automation to companies demands way more, and in that challenge I don't hold back. I show you everything you need to know because I want to give you the real picture. Alright, with that being said, let's jump to the presentation. Let's find out what a Flask app is and then we will build one. Good. What is a Python-based Flask app and why you need it for truly powerful AI automations? I want to show you real quick the agenda. We start with what is a Python-based Flask app, why do you need it for AI automations, the structure and function of such an app, easy explained, and then we will build a simple Flask app with ChatGPT and we run it on our server. Alright, so let's jump right into the first point. What is a Python-based Flask app? A Flask app is a small web application built with Python, and you already learned what Python is. It is a programming language. It lets you turn your Python scripts into web applications. And what's the difference here? A Python script is just a document full of Python code. And then what? A Flask app is basically turning that page of code into an actual running application. This is a Flask app. It is super lightweight, fast and easy to customize for any automation. This is important. We have to be flexible. It can't be anything super complicated. And because of that, I like to work with Flask apps because we can just make ChatGPT customize it however we want and it works absolutely perfect. On top of that, it can be easily connected to end-to-end workflows. This is exactly what we need because we want to combine end-to-end Flask apps, user interfaces, the whole package. So the next question, why do you need that for AI automations? Of course, it allows you to turn your AI automations into real web applications. As I already mentioned several times, oftentimes your client thinks he just needs an end-to-end workflow, but in the end he realizes he also needs a user interface, he actually needs a website integration, he needs the whole package. And if you then have no idea about all these things, you are already cooked. And because of that, you need to know about things like Flask and also how to deploy websites and so on. And this is exactly what I cover in that challenge. All right, it allows you to combine your end-to-end workflows with nice user interfaces. This is what we work on right now. It gives you access to Pillow. It is important for automated content creation. Pillow is basically a Python integration that allows you to create and modify images in a certain way. For example, take an image, put text on it, resize it, and so on. And we will use that very soon in the challenge when we create our yacht images. But more on that later. And lastly, it just expands your toolbox and it gives you even more possibilities. This is exactly why we do all that. I say it again and again, just end-to-end is not enough. You also need to know about these things. Alright, so that's it generally regarding Flask, and now I want to walk you through a super simple example to show you how the general structure of every Flask app looks like. So everything always begins with the top, where we import the so-called dependencies. And this brings in the modules and libraries your Flask app needs to work It's like selecting tools needed for a certain job. In Python, there are already certain libraries and so-called dependencies, and these are like packages and tools. And at the very top of each Flask app, we just import whatever we need for our application. So we don't import the entire Python universe, we just import what we need for exactly that application. And this is always happening at the very top of the app. This can also be a little bit longer, so we can import more packages, more dependencies, but you always find it at the very top of the Flask app. Then we have so-called functions or helpers. These contain the core logic your app uses to perform the task. It helps to keep your code organized, reusable, and easy to maintain, and they are used by your routes or endpoints to process data and return results. So what do we have here? This is basically just a function. It does a certain task for you. In that case, it just doubles any number that is provided. And the important thing here to know is that these functions or helpers just execute when they are called. So we can mention them, call them whenever we want, but they don't just execute for themselves. This is important to understand. And then next to the function and helpers, we also have the so-called endpoints. And these endpoints define the routes where your app receives and sends data. Each endpoint runs specific code when it's accessed. They act as the connection points between your app and the outside world. And here is the big difference. We have our functions or helpers, and they have no connection to the outside world. They just get executed when they get called by a so-called endpoint. And the endpoints, they are the connection to the outside world. So it could be that a n8n workflow or our user interface is calling that endpoint, and within that endpoint we call the function double number, and then we call exactly that function up here. So this is just generally important to understand. Okay, again, we have the endpoints, they can be reached by the outside world, and then we have our functions and helpers. They are just internally to be used by our endpoints. I hope this is clear now. No worries, you don't have to code such a thing for yourself. I just want you to understand generally what we are doing and how these Flask apps are built. After the endpoints, we have the very end, and this is the server port responsible. The Flask server runs your app and handles all incoming requests. The port is the specific entry point where your app listens for connections. Together, they make your app accessible through a web address. So you can basically imagine it like that. Your server has several ports, and down here in the app, you specify on which specific port this application is listening for incoming traffic. Okay, so this is all you have to know at that point. All right, and this is already everything that I wanted to tell you about Flask apps. Again, you don't have to program or code that for yourself. We will do it with ChatGPT, but it is important to understand at least a little bit, okay, how is that thing structured? We have here the very top where we import our dependencies and packages. We have our functions or helpers. We have our endpoints, and of course, down there we have our port. So this is just what you need to know about it at that point. All right, that's it regarding the structure. And here I want to show you a bigger example. And it is important to know that that thing and all that is more or less the same thing. It is just bigger. So here we have more dependencies, we have more functions, we have more API endpoints, but it actually follows the same simple principle. And once you understand that, you can also create something like that with ChatGPT. Because you can, for example, tell it, please integrate a new endpoint that does the following, and then you just specify, and then you can integrate another endpoint like that into that script, and from now on your app has a new functionality. This is actually all the magic that is happening there. All right, this is it, and now we go over to ChatGPT and we build a simple Flask app with ChatGPT, we deploy it and run it on our server. And then tomorrow and the upcoming days, we will further develop that app into something truly useful for our Yacht Calculator. Because my idea is to create an app that can not only create a yacht image, how we already did it with the very first workflow at NNN. I want to create like a nice representation. I want to have the company logo, I want to have the yacht image, and then I want to have some bullet points as layover, exactly demonstrating all the benefits of the yacht a customer is designing on our Yacht Calculator. But more on that later. In the first step, I show you how to build a very first super simple, super basic Flask app so that you already understand how this thing works. And for that purpose, I prepared another prompt. Prompt 3, creation of first basic Flask app. In the next step, I want you to create a Flask app for me. We begin with a very simple Flask app running on my server and using the virtual Python environment you created earlier. The app will later be further developed into the actual yacht designer for my website. But for now, I just want a super short and simple Flask app. The goal is just to get it running. From there we go on. Here's what you need to know about the app. First, the app should be using the virtual Python environment you created earlier. That's the server IP. You have to exchange that with your IP address. Make the app listen on the port 5002. I just gave it a random port. Just select here any random number between 5000 and 5020. It doesn't matter, just go with 5002 as well. Make the app run consistently with a systemd service. This is another important thing that we will get to know about. It just allows us that our apps just keep running 24/7. We don't have to start it again and again. Give it just one Flask endpoint for now that is called double. It should do nothing else but receive a number and sending back the double of that number. That's all. Okay, so in the very first example, I just want to create a very simple app that is already running on our server, listening to the right ports. But all it is doing for now, to demonstrate how it works, is that it receives a number and then it returns the double of the number. Okay, we keep it super simple. For testing purposes, give me also the curl command to test the Flask endpoint. So basically this will be a command that we can bash into our terminal, then we can send a number and we receive the double. So by that we can test if the app is actually working. Give me the exact steps to get this app running on my server, and of course also the app itself, and also tell me how I need to update my Nginx configuration to get the app working. Okay, so Nginx is our web server, and we also have to customize that Nginx configuration so that it can handle the traffic for our Flask app. All right, so now we make a copy of that prompt. And again, also here, I will provide in the resources at challenge.germanyicreator.com exactly my bashes and commands. So in case you don't get along with what ChatGPT is giving you, you can just take my files and adjust them to your needs by, for example, switching out the IP address or your domain name. But of course, if you want to follow along exactly what I do here, just do the same. Make a copy of that prompt. Then you go back to the same chat that we already used, website design creation. Okay, so this is still the chat that we used for everything, yeah, for the website creation, to get our JavaScript, everything, okay, same chat, so that it has all the context. And then we paste that prompt in here, exactly the prompt I just showed you, and we send it out. And now we should get the following. We get our Flask app, a Python-based app, and we also get a new Nginx configuration. Excellent. We'll now deploy a minimal Flask app behind Nginx. Use your existing virtual environment in opt.rosalia.venv. Expose it initially on exactly that port. Run it continuously via systemd by Gunicorn, this is our web server, and proxy it through Nginx. We'll create the app.python, install the dependencies, create a production Gunicorn systemd service, add API double endpoint, add Nginx reverse proxy block, test with curl. Okay, so this is everything I wanted. And now again, we get everything we need to do in the server. All right, I still have my server open, but in case you are logged out, just log in again with SSH, your username, and then your IP address. Then in the first step, you navigate to the right folder. I actually already am in that folder, but I just do it again. Then we activate the virtual environment. Remember, this is where we installed Python. Now we activated it, and now we install Flask and Gunnycore. It could be that we already installed it, but we just do it again. We paste it in here, we hit enter, and now this gets installed in our virtual environment. All right, this is already done. You see, it was already satisfied. It is already installed. And now we create our app. Okay, and you see it is exactly the kind of structure that I showed you in the presentation. So we have up here the import of our dependencies. Then we have here our app root, indicated by that little app sign. This is going until here. And in the end, we have our server port listening on 5002, exactly as we want it. And that thing around here is basically just a bash that allows us to create the entire thing in one go. So we make a copy of that, we go to the server, I paste it in, and I hit enter. Great. Then we go on with that command, we paste it in, enter, and perfectly, this is exactly what we wanted to see, running on HTTPS, and then here we have our port, exactly as it says here. And now we can already test it out with a so-called curl request. We can just make a copy of that, and then we can already test out the app. All we have to do is just opening up a new server terminal. All right, as you can see, I have now two terminals. This is exactly where I stopped, where I logged into the virtual environment, where I installed everything. And now I just opened the terminal again. I logged into my server, and now we can test it out with the curl request. So here we basically send exactly the value 10 to the endpoint that we called double. And if everything works, we get back the double of it, 20. So we just paste it in here, and we send it out, and as you can see, it worked great. We see up here that we received a request to our app, and down here we received the output 20. So our Flask app is already running and listening on the right port, and everything worked fine. Now that the test was successful, we can close that, and we go back to our main terminal here, and we keep going with step number 7. Now we create a Gunnycore systemd service, and as I mentioned earlier, this is just a service that allows us to keep the app running 24/7. And here you see it says replace your user with the username you log in with, often root, Ubuntu or Debian. We use root. Because of that, we have to switch out here the name root, but I want ChatGPT to do that for me. So I tell it, give me all steps from step 7 on and integrate in step 7 the username root. Okay, because this is our username. I send it out. All right, this worked. You see, we got now all the steps from 7 on until the very end, and we can keep going. So now we just make a copy of that. Here in the terminal, I just use Control and C to get back where I stopped. We copy that and I paste it in here. All right, this worked. Then we enable and start the service. So we make a copy of these 4 lines and we paste it down here. We hit enter. And also this looks good. You see, active and running. So now our app is running 24/7. Now we have to update our Nginx configuration so that our API endpoints in our Flask app can actually be reached through the internet. So what we have to do now is we take that command, we paste it in here, and now we see our Nginx configuration, how ChatGPT gave it to us in the first step. And here you see that we already had this placeholder area that ChatGPT created for us. And now we just have to delete that and we have to switch it out with that. Important here is that you cannot just mask something here and then hit the delete button. This won't work. You have to work here with the cursor. You see, with the mouse wheel, it can switch the cursor. So what I recommend to you now is to do the following. You just go to exactly that point, and with Control and K, you can delete all these commands. So this is just text. It has nothing to do with our actual configuration because there is the hashtag. So you delete everything here with the hashtag until here. Okay, and then you make a copy of all that, Command C, we paste it to ChatGPT, Command V, and we tell it, give me back the Nginx configuration with the new server block included. Okay, and then give me also back all the steps after that. Okay, then we send it out. Why did I do that? We could also just put that in here manually, but in my experience, this is always when things go wrong. So just let ChatGPT do it, because also here the intention matters, you know, the distances and everything. So it's just better if ChatGPT does this for us. You see, now we have it completely reworked. We make a copy. I go back here, and then with Control K, I just delete the entire script. And then we make a copy of that. I actually already did it, and we paste it in here. Okay. And now, important, pay attention. You use Control O, you hit Enter, and then with Control X, you exit that again. Okay. This is very important, because otherwise it is not saved. All right. Now we can test the Nginx configuration. We paste it in. We have test is successful, syntax is okay. So this worked. Then we reload Nginx. This is done. Then we check again if it is running and working. Also that looks good, active and running. And now we can test it in step D publicly from our local computer and not logged in to our servers. And so this is a very important step. So what we do now is the following. We make a copy of exactly that command. So you see we try to reach again our endpoint double, and we send now the value 7. We make a copy. Then you open a completely fresh terminal. You see this is now local. This is not logged into my server. Then I paste that line here and I hit enter. And you see it worked fine because we got input 7, output 14. And this is now a crucial step, because now it shows that I was able to reach that API endpoint within the Flask app from my local computer. So this shows that everything is working fine. All right, it also suggests that we test a failure endpoint. For example, if we send a word instead of a number, we should get back an error. This is pretty obvious, so that we don't have to do that. And it also shows us how we can get the logs to see what is going on, but we also don't do that for now. And we also have the commands to restart the app. And I recommend to just store these 2 lines of code, because we need them again and again. Whenever we change something at the app, we need to restart the service, and we also need to reload Nginx. And because of that, it's just good to make a copy of these 2 lines of code. So I recommend you to just store these 2 lines where you also stored the password and the login for your server. All right, and the rest is totally fine. We already checked that everything is running. And at this point, yes, congratulations from ChatGPT, everything is looking good, everything is running fine. And I want to sum up one more time what we did achieve now. We have now our website running on our server and deployed to our domain. This is what we did yesterday. And today we also built a Python-based Flask app that is now running also on our server, and it can be reached now via the internet. So everything is nice and running. Now in the next step, we will further develop that Flask app so that it actually serves the purpose of our Yacht Configurator. But more on that tomorrow. That's it for today. Let me know in the comments if everything worked for you. If not, reach out to me in the comments or send me an email. Also go to challenge.germanaiCreator.com, because there you find all the prompts, all the resources, and also the exact bashes I used. So in case you don't get along with what ChatGPT is giving you, you can just take my files, tell ChatGPT to exchange the IP address, the port number, or the domain name, and then you can just copy what I did. That's it for today. We keep going tomorrow. Have a nice day. Cheers, Dom.